Today, new polling from the Washington Post and Ipsos shows that Americans oppose the plan 2-1. It turns out cutting taxes for the very wealthy and for big corporations while cutting health care for everyone else is not very popular. And if you were hoping the Senate would moderate the worst impulses of the House Republican caucus, I got some bad news. As it turns out, the Senate version of the bill cuts more from Medicaid, imposing even stricter work requirements than the House bill. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's a Democrat of Texas. She's running to serve as ranking member of the Oversight Committee, and she joins me now. Good to have you here.
Good to see you.
Let's start with the polling because it strikes me as both sort of encouraging for those opponents of the bill, also a huge messaging opportunity because a third of people don't have an opinion of it. So you've got 23 support, 42% oppose, 34% no opinion. What does that say to you?
Yeah, it says that we still have a lot of work to do as it relates to kind of getting the message out. I do appreciate the fact that we've had some time.
Stephen Miller might be the most morally reprehensible member of Donald Trump's administration, but it's not the only title that he holds in that White House. He's also the weirdest and most uncomfortable, and it's clearly not just me who believes that Donald Trump does as well. And a new leaked report details just how much he thinks that and actually says it as well. We are going to get into the humiliation of Stephen Miller as he's also humiliated by his failing immigration agenda. We're going to get into it all. But before we do, I want to start on that immigration agenda, which was called out for its failures by Senator Alex Padilla right here.
It is astonishing that it's like we're the frog in a boiling pot of water and the heat just keeps getting turned up and we don't realize, a lot of us, what's happening.
Yeah. So, a couple of pieces here. Number one, it's always easy to put this back in perspective. If you flip the question around, imagine if President Biden did something that Donald Trump did, what would Republicans say then? Right? A president of the United States suggesting, no, that governor, that mayor, no, we have to liberate that city. I mean, that's exactly the rhetoric that compelled me to speak at the press conference last week, not just as a senator, but as an American. Number one. Number two, when they suggested that the mission of the military was to go in and do the liberty, that is not what Marines are trained to do. That is not what they can fight wars overseas, but you don't use them against your own people. And so that was my appeal to my colleagues. Is this the precedent that we're saying? Are you okay with this? Because I'm not. This is not normal, and we should not treat it as normal.
So, Senator, where do you see things now? How do we move from your incident and the one we saw today with Brad Lander, and who himself noted that he was just there to accompany defendants and advocate for due process for those defendants? You were in that federal building there again to take care of other business, but happened to have the secretary down the hall and say, okay, let me go stop in and listen. And then wanted to address what was being said and was summarily handcuffed out of the building. How do we move forward from here? Because my sense is there's only one ear open to this. The other ear is shut. As you noted at the beginning with your first comments that, a handful of Republicans showed up. But to be clear, whether it is the assassination of state officials in Missouri or Minnesota, or the arrest of a United States senator, there is no compelling argument from the other side to say this is not who we are, this should not stand, even though it's happening with Trump. You don't have to call him out if you don't want to, but at least address the moment in front of us.
So I think there's a couple of things. First of all, not surprised, because let's just do a little play-by-play. On Thursday, what happened to me. Come Friday, there was an announcement that the president was directing DHS to let up on enforcement in hotels and agricultural fields and restaurants, and we thought, maybe there's a glimmer here. Maybe there's a baby step in the right direction. Oh, by Friday, that was all gone. Like, no. Not only are we restoring that, we're doubling down in blue cities, is what he said. So the clear partisan political attack, he's saying the quiet part out loud. And so so while we try to appeal to our Republican colleagues, we know that what will really move them is the people. And one of the best things that has happened over the last several days is the millions of people who came out across the country on Saturday. By and large, very, very peaceful, but you can't deny the numbers. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle cannot deny the numbers.
And they came out in red cities and red counties.
Every state in the country. And once they see that, look, Donald Trump, he may be there his 4-year term, but at some point that's going to come to an end.
Right.
The people ain't going nowhere.
Right.
And so my big message is for the general public, please stay engaged. Donald Trump would like nothing more than for us to be fearful and stay quiet, for us to cower and stay home. No, we have to continue to defend our First Amendment rights by exercising.
Donald Trump has said again and again that he thinks immigration was the single most important issue in getting him reelected. That this, above all else, is what he could find public support in. And polling shows that in many ways to be true. But Donald Trump has squandered whatever support he had for his disgusting illegal immigration attack by going as far as he possibly could in breaking the law at the instruction of Stephen Miller, a guy who said just a few weeks ago that he wanted to suspend habeas corpus. So of course Donald Trump could be the dictator on day one that he promised. And he's been forever raising the stakes since then with his attack on LA, the National Guard sending in ICE, sending in Marines. It has all backfired as Trump's immigration plan increasingly becomes unpopular. And it is for that failure, along with just how uncomfortable he makes us all, why Donald Trump is not too happy with Stephen Miller. And I want to get into that. Right here, Trump has a nasty secret nickname for Stephen Miller. Biographer reveals Donald Trump has a less than flattering nickname for Stephen Miller. His White House Deputy Chief of Staff, Weird, Stephen. The typically juvenile nickname Trump gave one of his most loyal allies and the architect behind many of his hardline immigration policies was revealed by biographer Michael Wolff on the Daily Beast podcast. There is an awareness that Stephen Miller is a problem, Wolff said. And even Trump calls him weird, Stephen, because he is weird. By the way, I mean, you can't spend a moment with him and not say, gee, something's off there. When host Joanna Coles pressed him on why Miller earned the nickname Wolf, explained, he doesn't make eye contact and then he talks to you in this monotone voice and it feels very revy. You know the engine of his voice keeps going and you kind of step back. Wolff was addressing speculation over whether Miller might fall out of favor if Donald Trump's sweeping immigration plans fall flat. Miller has been pushing Immigration and Customs Enforcement to detain at least 3,000 migrants a day as a part of Donald Trump's pledge to carry out the largest mass deportation effort in U.S. history. But Trump has already shown signs of softening on Miller's hardline approach. Last week, he floated possible exemptions for farm and hotel workers' industries that rely heavily on migrant labor, which Miller fiercely fought against. Wolff said that Trump's public and explosive fallout with Elon Musk soon after the tech billionaire left his Department of Government Efficiency role is a sign of what happens if one of the president's inner circle gains too much power and influence. Trump, who is lazy, lets other people be in charge until they're perceived as being in charge. Then they're no longer in charge. Wolff said, responding to the nickname claims. A White House spokesperson told the Daily Beast that Michael Wolff, as they always say is a lying sack of, has been proven to be a fraud. He routinely fabricates stories originating from his sick and warped imagination, only possible because he has a severe and debilitating case of Trump derangement syndrome that has rotted his peanut-sized brain. The Stephen Miller of it all is quite the interesting development because he continues to gain power and influence over this administration. But one thing is clear, Donald Trump does not like being overshadowed. And that is what we have recently seen with the response to his failing immigration plan. Donald Trump is trying to pull back in a moment in which he understands that he is politically unpopular with these moves. And what does Stephen Miller do? He goes over his head the policy that Donald Trump reversed on saying, no, we're not going to actually be going into hotels. We're not going to be going to farms, snatching people out, doing hard work in their communities. Stephen Miller has decided, actually, Donald, we are going to do that. Because, of course, Stephen Miller decided that he is a sick and vile person. So if this continues to be a problem, if Trump continues to be embarrassed, as Senator Alex Padilla said, this authoritarian takeover fails, who does that fall on? Well, I think it's Stephen Miller. I think his weird, uncomfortable nature makes him the easy person to point the finger at, and it's going to be a pretty orange and angry finger because more failures are on the way. And Jasmine Crockett detailed all of those, talking about Donald Trump's domestic agenda in this clip right here.
Today, new polling from the Washington Post and Ipsos shows that Americans oppose the plan 2-1. It turns out cutting taxes for the very wealthy and for big corporations while cutting health care for everyone else is not very popular. And if you were hoping the Senate would moderate the worst impulses of the House Republican caucus, I got some bad news. As it turns out, the Senate version of the bill cuts more from Medicaid, imposing even stricter work requirements than the House bill. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's a Democrat of Texas. She's running to serve as ranking member of the Oversight Committee, and she joins me now. Good to have you here.
Good to see you.
Let's start with the polling because it strikes me as both sort of encouraging for those opponents of the bill, also a huge messaging opportunity because a third of people don't have an opinion of it. So you've got 23 support, 42% oppose, 34% no opinion. What does that say to you?
Yeah, it says that we still have a lot of work to do as it relates to kind of getting the message out. I do appreciate the fact that we've had some time, which is something that we didn't have when we went through the continuing resolution fight that we had, where you know who sent out a tweet and all of a sudden a bill went kaput. And so I do appreciate that we're kind of getting through it, but you're talking about pages and pages of legislation. And then you have, you know, the Trump administration throwing things out like, oh, we're not going to put a tax on this, so you should love it. But they're not telling the other side of the story. Like at the end of the day, would you rather have a tax bill that may be $5, you know, less that you're normally keeping in your pockets, but you don't have this crazy random healthcare bill?
Right.
Probably so, right? Like, and the reality is that people are going to die. You know, listening to the stories of people that literally have only been able to live because of Medicaid, it's heartbreaking. And the fact that we're talking about rich people just keeping more money in their pockets while literally other people are going to die, it sounds anti-American and definitely sounds anti-patriotic.
So one of the things that generally when I've covered big bills in domestic policy in DC, you know, there's this idea of like the Senate is like the cooling saucer, and that, you know, and that usually things come back from the Senate like more moderate, but both on the left and the right. That is generally the way things go. It seems to me like Ron Johnson and the sort of right-wing faction in the Senate is actually pushing to make this bill more aggressive on the cuts side. And I'm wondering if you were anticipating that, or if you thought you were expecting a more moderate bill.
No, I was expecting the Senate to fix everything. I mean, I was expecting it still to come back as a bad bill, but we're talking about
You thought it would get better.
Correct. I thought it would get better. We're talking about a bill that only made it through the House by one vote.
Right.
One vote. So literally it's like two people went AWOL, right? And another two Republicans voted with the Dems, and then another one just said, listen, I'm just going to white light this, or, you know, vote present.
Yeah. Donald Trump's promise on the campaign trail was that he'd make your life easier. And fundamentally, his presidency has been everything. But that lives have been more chaotic. The nonsense of the day-to-day Trump stories isn't just an imposition in and of itself. Those stories are real, and they hurt you. The tweets aren't just mean. They're causing potential recessions. They're causing potential wars. Donald Trump, through his own dementing brain, is interfering with your life and making you less free. Whether it's with his budget or his blades, it is a problem that we will continue to call out on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. Leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, you drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.